Welcome back to the shop. We are finally back in the shop today. It's been months probably at this point since I made my last video. I've been between projects. I've gotten the buggy pretty squared away. I still need to do some tuning and such to it. But I've been prepping for getting set up to get started on the next project, which is going to be my truck project. And part of that prep is what we're doing today, which is I'm super excited about. As you saw from the title, we're going to be, we finally got a lift, automotive lift for the shop. This has been a long time coming. I've wanted an automotive lift for, many years. As I get older, I just don't feel like crawling around on the ground anymore when working on cars. I've done that my whole life, and I'm old now, so Dad always gets cracked up when I talk about being old, but I feel like I'm getting older. It's kind of scary, but anyway, so I'm gonna turn the camera around, get it off the tripod here, and show you what we got going so far. All right, so here we are. The shop is a total mess right now, as we've been having to shuffle things around to deal with, the size of this lift. We've gotten one of the posts off of what it came in the shipping configuration with. It's got these fabricated angle iron ends that they were bolted to for shipping. We haven't taken this one off because I think it's going to be a little easier to move this thing with them still attached. But the other one is sitting right here. So the beginning part of the install here is getting some of the cables and such prepped for standing the posts up, because the instructions say that that's going to be a little easier to do now. So we'll get started with that. We started by unpacking this thing, and that was quite the task given how heavy all this stuff is. This is one of the posts, and inside the post they packed what I'm pulling out now, which is the crossbar. So the crossbar goes across the top of the two posts, spanning them. It serves as a way to route the hydraulic hose, as well as the equalizing cables and the lock release cable. So weirdly enough, it came packaged with this brick looking like substance. And I guess it was just for, it just peels right off. It looks like a brick, but when you pick it up, it's super light. It's like pressed sawdust. But this was in there in the post to basically serve as just to stand off the padding. Yeah, basically packaging to hold up these posts during shipping. Now we're starting to prepare the posts before we stand them up. This first step is going to be installing the cable that will activate the safety locks. Dad is feeding a cable through a hole in the safety lock on the post opposite the power post. That safety lock there is a piece of iron with a spring behind it that grabs on to the leg assembly as it goes up. The button end of this cable captures the lock, routes up through a sheave, across the crossbar, down through another sheave, and into the lock release handle that pulls on the cable, allowing you to lower the legs down. Here's a close-up view of Dad pulling on that cable so you can see what it does here. Now we're installing the equalizing cables. Each post gets a much thicker cable. This is a load-bearing cable that the instructions call equalizing cables. The hydraulics of this thing are pretty simple. It's just a pump with a single output that goes to a T and then routes via hoses from the T to the two rams that push down on the ground, lifting up the leg assemblies. There's nothing sophisticated about that, in that if one ram starts to outpace the other, then without these equalizing cables, it would offset the load. What the equalizing cables do is effectively shift more of the load to one or the other cylinder when one starts to outpace the other, keeping them lifting at equal pace regardless of one ram being more efficient than the other because of the hose routing, or if you're lifting a load that isn't balanced, it might be heavier on one side versus the other. These equalizing cables prevent that from becoming a problem. Now I'm just sliding the leg assembly all the way to the bottom. We only needed it halfway up there so we could get to the sheave and work with it. Moving it to the bottom is gonna prepare for the lift.
Okay.
Now we're starting to prepare for the lift. We're going to initially use the gantry crane to lift the end of it up just to get it over the top of the loader, and then use the loader for the remainder of the lift. I wish we had a forklift for lifts like this. It would be easier with a forklift, but the loader tractor does get the job done here. I thought this was going to be a lot more sketchy than it actually turned out to be. Once we start the lift, I'll be on the end to essentially catch it as it tips past the balance point, which seems really sketchy, but interestingly enough, with the leg assembly all the way at the bottom, the center of gravity of this post is very low. So you get like 95% of the way tipped up before it wants to get past the balance point, that the part where you have to catch. We put a safety strap. As you can see, we have a ratchet strap wrapped around, and then I also put safety wire on the clasps of the ratchet strap just to make sure it didn't come apart. We didn't even really need that though. It wasn't that big of a deal. You can see Dad manipulating the loader too. As pushes forward, he lifts up and curls occasionally also. I have my foot on the bottom just to prevent it from wanting to slip out. I didn't know in the beginning stages of this lift if it was going to want to slide out. It didn't really do that at all. Here I am preparing to catch it, but you'll see it's not even close to the balance point yet. But just to be sure, obviously be careful in a lift like this. Watch my feet. I'm making sure that my toes are not getting under the end of that. It still hasn't tipped. It still hasn't got to the balance point yet. I'm still waiting to catch it. And then right about now is when it starts to tip. So you can see it's almost all the way up before it starts to get to the point where you have to catch it. So it's really not too bad. Now we're just spinning it around to orient it the way that it's going to be installed, with the feet pointing at the other post. A little precarious here. We just have to be a little careful. The footprint of this post is pretty wide and stable though, so we're just being ginger with how fast we turn this thing around so we don't accidentally tip it over. Now let's just repeat the process on the other post. This is going to be the power side post. I figure I'll show some of this again here, sped up slightly, just because I didn't get the framing very good. This one's framed a little bit better. As the camera's a little bit further away, you can see how tall this thing is and more of what Dad's doing too. All right, so we got both posts up. We don't have all the bolts installed, but we just got enough bolts to keep it from falling on us, hopefully. So I don't know how sketchy that comes off on camera as far as the tractor lift, but it wasn't that bad. This thing is so bottom heavy that it's like 95% of the way tipped up before it hits the balancing point that I have to catch. So it's like really easy to catch actually. We had a safety strap around there with the ratchet strap, but we could have done it without it. It's fairly easy to catch. So got that squared away. Now the next step is we're going to assemble the overhead bar. So there's an overhead bar that serves as a structure to route the hydraulic hoses, the leveling cables, and there's a small, I'll show you that later, there's a small release cable, that goes from one side to the other that releases locks, so you can pull a lever and have these two locks release at the same time, that holds the pads. The locks hold it in its position. All right, it's the next morning and we are getting pretty close. We got both posts up, just a few of the bolts in it for right now because we'll have to do final leveling and shimming and stuff. So we'll probably do the final bolts and all the shims and everything at the very end. What we're going to be getting started on today is going to be the overhead assembly. So when we cut off yesterday, we had put it together. As you can see, it's in 2 pieces. And then this morning, I'm going to start with getting the safety bar installed and the micro switch, and basically just it ready to go up. We cut off a little bit early yesterday because of the next step, which, you know, that overhead bar is not particularly light to be carrying up a ladder, coordinating 2 people up 2 ladders. So we're gonna be setting up something today to hopefully make the overhead stuff a little bit easier. So you'll see that a little bit later in the morning. Here's the crossbar sitting upside down relative to how it'll be installed. I'm getting this safety cutoff bar installed. The purpose for this bar is to activate a micro switch if you lift the vehicle too high. So because this is flipped upside down, imagine it the other way. As you're lifting the vehicle, the top of the vehicle is eventually gonna, if you keep going, is gonna eventually touch this bar, which will activate this micro switch, and that will shut off the pump, keep you from lifting the vehicle too far. The other purpose for the crossbar is to route the equalizing cables as well as the cable that pulls on the safety latches to let the legs back down. One of the hydraulic hoses actually goes across there too to get to the other side ram. You see I'm having a tweak on the bracketry a little bit here. They didn't get these quite straight. I don't know if they just bent in shipping or what, but. All right, so I was just installing the safety bar. Now this overhead assembly is sitting on these sawhorses upside down. So imagine, you know, it's going to be up there with this bar suspended this way, hanging basically in these little brackets. And what this bar is for, you know, you can see it's got some styrofoam on here, soft material, so that if you lift the vehicle too far, there's a micro switch that will be wired in here such that when the vehicle pushes on the bar, it'll activate the micro switch and cut the motor off. So it serves as a limit switch for the system. I got it roughly in place. Might have to take that back off and calibrate the switch a little bit, but it looks like it's activating. I might try to adjust that out a little bit so it activates just a little sooner, but we'll see once we get it all up there. I'm also gonna have to wire it, but I'll probably wait to get it up there to do that. All right, so here's the setup I was talking about. It's not exactly a scaffolding, but it's what we got. It's the next best thing. So standing on this platform, we'll still need a ladder on this side because it's obviously not wide enough, but this will make it way less sketchy, especially getting it up there because we can stage it up there before we even get up there. And then one person at least has a good platform to stand on for getting the one side positioned and being able to hold it. So that should be make it a little bit easier than to sketchy ladder operation. All right, the top post is up there. I haven't done much for filming today. Me and Dad are pretty much completely shot. Tiring day. We did get that thing up there, and the cables are routed. You can probably see the cables going through the sheaths. Those cables are for equalization. I'll talk about that later after we get the rest of it installed, but I think that'll be it for today. We also got the rest of the bolts in the posts, so the posts are anchored in place, and
they're actually plumb.
Yep. The posts are plumb, and we got the power unit installed. That's it for today. All right, it's the next weekend. We're back to work on the lift project. We got a lot done last week. You can see the posts are up, the top bar is up and on. We got the posts plumbed and all tightened and torqued down. And we also got the pump mounted, as well as the lock release. This is what you use to release the locks to let the lift back down, but we'll show you all that later. There is a box that goes over this. So we'll end up coiling up this excess and putting it in the box, but I didn't want to mount the box yet because we may still have to adjust the tension on this cable a little bit after we actually move it up and down and test it and whatnot. So today we'll get started into the directions and figure out what the next steps are, but it's probably going to be, I would think, getting the lift arms in there. The other thing that came in the mail is some parts that we need for doing the wiring. That'll be super cool. Hopefully we'll be able to finish this up this week and get to lifting stuff. I'm so excited for this lift, you have no idea. This is the ram opposite the power side. So this hydraulic hose here goes up across the crossbar and then down to this side. This is the fitting. Each ram has this little fitting that you put in the very bottom of the ram. It's a 90 that is pipe thread on one end and AN on the other. It came with its own thread sealant, which is the goop that you just see me put on there. I've never seen thread sealant like this. It's weird, it's like gel consistency. Because of that 90, I had to get the cherry picker over here and lift up the leg assembly so there was enough clearance to thread the fitting on. All right, haven't recorded a whole lot the last couple days. As you can see, we got the lift arms installed. We were leveling them earlier. Today is all about the wiring. We ran the wire from the box to here. We're gonna be installing some conduit to run that wire down. Also have a shut-off switch, kind of an emergency shut-off switch there. And first thing this morning that I'm gonna work on is getting the micro switch wiring situated, and that will come down here into this box also. So that's what I'm gonna get started on today. All right, here we are. The time has finally come to try and lift a vehicle. Dad's under there right now getting everything lined up. We'll see if it works. We're gonna have to, it's probably gonna be weird, like jerky and stuff, the instructions say, because we gotta get the rest of the air out. But that's part of what we need to do, is put a weight on it, get the vehicle lifted, and then go up and down a little bit to get the air purged out. So, a couple safety considerations to mention here. What we're doing is, first we're lifting it up to the first safety latch and then pulling it down so it's on the safety latch, and it's only like a foot or two off the ground. And then what we're doing is we're just going around to the front and the back of the vehicle and just giving it a, just pushing down on each end and feeling how stable it is. If something were to happen right now, if it was teetery or we didn't get the balance quite right, then it would want to fall off. And even if it fell off right now, it's only going to fall, a foot or so. So you always want to do this before you, put the vehicle in the air and certainly get under it and start working on it. So now we're just going the rest of the way up. And this is also going to serve to bleed the system. The instructions say the system is self-bleeding, so as we put a load on here, go up and down a few times, it'll help get the air out of the system. The other thing I'll mention here that you want to do is lift up past the safety latch, then let it back down so it's on the safety latch. That way you're not relying on the hydraulics. Would you just look at it? Look at how amazing this is. It works. All right, we got the last few little details finished up. That's this little holder for the extensions. We're actually using a couple of extensions right now. Had to use a short one and a long one over here to miss the gas tank. So that's exactly what those are for, is for trucks. Probably for precisely that reason, is to get under rocker panels, and in this case the gas tank, to reach under there and get up to the frame. And then the last little thing we installed here is this little guard that covers up the safety release lever. Not safety, but the release lever to make it go down.
The locks.
Yeah, the locks. Here's a view of our conduit installation. So
It is complete.
that'll do. It's working. Excellent. The shop is now one level more legit.
We leveled up.
We leveled up. Yeah.
We actually leveled up the truck.
The truck is leveled up indeed. A few closing thoughts here. Super excited to use this thing. I'm so glad we got this in the shop finally. And it's going to help out with a lot of the projects that we have upcoming. So continue to watch as we release more videos, get back into the projects, and use this thing.